So you ready to just like fucking jump into this? Sorry, I didn't watch this. I completely
No, that's fine. I did
forgot.
watch it like in the last weeks 2 times, so I will. I think
Damn.
Yeah, that's plenty.
um, you know,
That's 7 hours of Oliver
That's
Stone.
7 hours. of
You
Oliver
did your
Stone.
Yeah.
duty. Yeah.
I do like watching that film for some reason. It's a well. I somehow it's. I don't know. I like it somehow.
It's a super well made film. I mean,
Yes.
Oliver Stone's a great director, if not
Yeah.
anything else.
When you watch it with your dad when you're like 13, though, it really fucks you up.
In Texas too, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you were there in the book depository, huh?
I was. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's pretty cool. It's really cool, actually. It's a great museum.
Is it used for anything, or is it just like a?
It's a museum.
Just-
Well, that floor is a museum. The building itself, I think, is offices.
What kind of
you
a
know?
museum? Like it's about JFK, or?
It's about the assassination.
Mm.
It's got like behind glass. They set up like Lee Harvey Oswald set up, and they have like all the historical
Mhm.
accurate like things that were in the warehouse around, and his gun is like up against the window and shit.
Yeah.
It's super fun. And then it's got a
Nice.
whole section for conspiracies. Like I heard actually that over time the conspiracy section of the museum has like almost outgrown the rest of the museum.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do the intro.
All right.
Slave.
Yes. Welcome to The Empire Never Ended. We're here with Ray. We got Boris, and I'm
Hello.
Fritz. And today we're talking about some minute men. I think.
Bands?
Is
Yeah.
that right? Some tiny men.
Yes, Minutemen. Yeah.
Minutemen. Ah,
Yeah.
that makes more sense. All right.
I
So then some
didn't.
militia
I
shit.
didn't go too much into like the historical group that existed.
Like in the Revolutionary War?
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, that's
didn't-
unnecessary.
I will say that Minutemen are like the good Minutemen are one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
I have an idea maybe to end this episode on with their song.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But we're talking about the worst Minutemen, I think,
Right. Yeah.
which existed in the 60s.
There are even some anti-fascist Minutemen, I think, in the interwar period.
Uh-huh.
I think it was a Jewish group called the Minutemen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of good
And
Minutemen out
it's-
there, and these are not them.
Well,
Yeah,
then
they're
there's
even
also
like-
the Border Patrol guys now.
Yeah, yeah,
The Minutemen
yeah.
Project.
Yeah, Minutemen just got shittier and shittier over time.
There's also fictional Minutemen, like in Alan Moore's like Watchmen universe.
Of course, yeah.
Mm.
And which are also assholes, I think. But yeah, and so we're talking about their armed militia group,
Aw.
which is like one of maybe the first or the first like groups of this modern era American militia movement.
Yeah, they
it
kind of
was
they made the blueprint, right, for groups to
yeah.
come.
I
right?
mean, I guess so. I don't know. We at some point we'll need an arc about the American militia movement, I think.
probably.
And probably we'll come back to the Minutemen then. But yeah, some of their members claim that they started basically the militia movement.
Yeah. Mm.
So they were a very anti-communist group, which was expecting imminent communist invasion, and this is
Okay.
the reason why they started. So they were a violent organization, and they claimed that they were trained in guerrilla warfare, which I mean, some of them did. Some of them, I'm not sure. But they posed as such and took a lot of photos while training. And they were a very spectacular group in that sense, very connected to the press and using press all the time
Okay.
to their benefit. In time, they evolved into this position that they're not only waiting for a communist invasion, but the U.S. government is already basically communist or infiltrated by communists,
Oh.
Mhm.
which is a kind of this is why I think they could be. We can say they are like an American stay-behind unit in this Gladio sense of things that we mentioned many times,
Mhm.
which is because okay, so the Gladio as a CIA-led Western intelligence agency-led operation of recruiting right-wing and Nazi people after the Second World War to form these stay-behind units in case of a Eastern Bloc invasion of Europe.
X2, baby.
Yeah, and which in time involved really in like terrorist, covert false flag terrorist actions against civilians in order to discredit, the domestic left-wing radical anarchist groups and so on. So I think there is a similar kind of evolution here, where they first start as like a group that wants to organize guerrilla in case of some kind of a Red Dawn scenario,
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and then
or as they call it, the
basically-
dream.
Yes, and then basically, then they start believing that we're already, controlled by communists, and we need to engage in terrorism now. So they were led by a very strange guy called Robert Depew. So the last name is Depugh, who always described himself as individualist. That's how he saw himself. He would be very offended if you call him a fascist. And and this is like I think this is also connected to the things that we talked before, like when we discussed British Israelism and Christian identity, and this idea of, this racist idea of some kind of genetically inherent Anglo-Saxon individualism.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
And so this is basically, I think we'll have time to discuss this a bit more.
This is why I think libertarianism in the American sense is so connected to fascism in America more than anywhere else.
Yes, and Robert Depew is a good example to discuss this. We'll see later what kind of ideas he had. So basically, he thought that communism is like a utopia that can never be achieved because it doesn't take into account, the natural
nature.
Yes,
Oh.
the natural differences between individuals. And so this, of course, really comes down to some kind of social Darwinist idea.
Yes, everybody who ever tells you that communism can't work because of human nature, that's what they fucking mean.
Yeah, so Depew specifically said, some are naturally hardworking and others are naturally lazy. So you guess who is who there.
Montenegrins?
So,
I think for them, probably, are black people both?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And there's only one way to fight communism, and that's we must take up the battle for individualism. That's his idea. So who is this asshole? So Robert Bolivar Depew was born in 1923 in Independence, Missouri. So his
name is Bolivar, and he was born in Independence. This guy was born for this.
So his father named him after Simon Bolivar, the South American anti-colonial revolutionary. And actually, in his adolescence, he went by Bolivar.
Great.
And only later switched to Robert. So his dad was a sheriff's deputy, and who was very involved in local Democratic Party politics and machine. In high school, Robert Depew was already active in the Reserve Officer Training Corps. He was an average student, and he graduated in 1941. He was reportedly an introvert, not popular at all.
Okay.
Had basically no friends.
Yeah.
And he was very much into amateur radio and working on all kind of electronic equipment and not really spending time with people.
I'm feeling him. I'm feeling this guy right now.
Yeah. So he had a maternal grandmother who was very anti-communist and who influenced him, and she was apparently an America First person who believed that it was a mistake for America to get involved in the Second World War. And this is a view that Depew shared, and basically probably his whole life. I think he thought it was a mistake for America to get involved in.
Sorry, when did you say he was born?
1923.
23. Okay.
Yeah. So he was a curious person, and while he was in high school, he liked reading, and he read Mein Kampf 3 times.
3 times out of curiosity.
Yes, very curious.
Yes.
He also says that he read Lenin and Marx in high school. but specifically that he read Mein Kampf 3 times.
Do you think when he says he read Lenin and Marx, he actually means he read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion?
No, he claimed that he read the Communist Manifesto, the collected works of Lenin, which there's no way he did that. And also, he lies that he read the Capital.
Nobody's actually finished Capital.
I mean, in high school. Come on.
Not in high school.
I mean, he doesn't know the basics of what communism is. That's like when he's an old man. So maybe he tried.
It's the attempt to destroy the individual.
Yeah.
So he definitely did not read Capital.
No. And
even Volume 1, he just couldn't.
Maybe he read the Communist Manifesto, which is like
that's an easy one. Yeah.
Yes. So he graduated in 1941, and he enrolled in the University of Missouri. That's the one that he actually, the university that he actually enrolled in. He claimed later that he enrolled in a few other universities. There's no record of that at all. He also claims that he joined the army in 1942. There's no record of that at all.
Okay.
This was in Colorado, and then he claimed that he attended University of Colorado. But what there is a record of is that he served in Coast Artillery in Virginia in 43 and 44. Shortly before that, he got married in, I think, 43. So he was discharged from the military, and he was discharged by a psychiatrist. And so I will read now what the psychiatrist said.
Can you read it in a good German psychiatrist accent?
No. Depew suffered from the following: psychoneurosis, mixed type, severe, manifested by anxiety and depressive features and schizoid personality. Soldier is unable to perform duty due to anxiety, nervousness, and mental depression. This condition is chronic and for 3 years has been attended with vague auditory hallucinations and mild ideas of reference.
Word. Okay.
So yeah,
he's fucking hearing things out there.
Yes.
Damn.
So he was discharged from the army, and says that in 46 he attended Kansas City University and then also Washburn University and Georgia Tech. There's no records of any of this at all. Okay. It's only his claim. I don't know why he lied that he attended so many universities, because he did admit that he has no university degree. But that his area of study, I guess, was biochemistry. In 1947, he started working as a salesman. So he worked for a few different companies selling different products. In 1952, he unsuccessfully attempted at running for Congress. So he got, in the Democratic primary, he got like 1,700 votes.
Yeah, and his campaign slogan was, "Does anybody else hear that?"
Yes. So the guy who won, like, for example, got more than 30,000 votes in the primary, and he got only like 1,700. The same year, his dad also unsuccessfully tried to become a sheriff. And
so it's just good. Yes. Nothing's working out for the family.
No.
The Depew family.
In 1953, he starts his company Biolab, which has a name of an evil company. This was a pharmaceutical company that made products for humans and animals, but mostly for animals. So the company failed in 1955 because Depew was forced to pay some taxes that he wasn't paying until then. And he was also arrested for passing bad checks and also opening bank accounts under phoney names. And,
he's bringing together a lot of trends in Americanism that we've
this is only
talked
the
about
beginning.
this arc. Okay,
no, there's a lot of this guy is.
He's a true son of the movement, though.
Yes, basically, but he was tipped off to the bank by his business partners, basically, that he's opening phoning accounts. So I guess they didn't like him. So he restarted Biolab in 1959, and this time he was successful and apparently became a millionaire as a young man in 1959. This is also the time when he decided to dedicate himself to the right-wing cause, and he joined the John Birch Society. So in 1951, for example, one of the first political things he did, he had an ad in Kansas City Star, in which he opposed gun control and such things. So like standard right-wing American stuff. In In 1960, he moved to Norborn, Missouri. He did that because he got a loan from the city, the town basically, which like hoped that he will like create jobs there. But what he did there was start the Minutemen, and they didn't like that at all. And
womp womp. It's fantastic. So they gave him a fucking loan to start a business and get people jobs, and instead he made a volunteer racist militia.
Yeah,
fantastic.
So Norborn at the time had like 900 people living there.
Okay,
and they were not really at all fans of the Minutemen at all. No one wanted to be associated with the Minutemen there. They didn't know him well, so he continued his style of communication with people that he developed in high school. Mostly spent his time working in biolab. Didn't really communicate much with the locals, and they would at best like see him and Minutemen as a kind of a joke. And they would, when asked about him, they would say that he's like a peculiar sort of fellow or something like this.
Very polite town.
Yes. And so they had a local newspaper which was called Norborn Democrat Leader. And they did not write about the Minutemen ever, even when they were like a national sensation and everyone wrote about them. The local newspaper just
not to think about
ignored that they exist.
Nice.
So, and no one of the local people ever joined the Minutemen. When he decided to, dedicate himself to the right-wing cause, he said that he traveled America to meet all right-wing leaders. And he didn't like anyone. And he really didn't like people much, but he didn't like any of the leaders that he met. And so...
Do you know who he claims to have met?
No, I don't remember now. He says all right-wing leaders.
All of them.
Yeah. So now we come to this period, which was about when he was getting ready to move from Independence to Norborn, is when he started Minutemen. And this is like he told, because he's a pathological liar, so he was telling different things about how all of this happened. But it's interesting. Even the lies are
4,000 years ago.
Yeah, not that kind of a liar. So he had he says he had a group of friends, which is also probably not true. He didn't have friends.
Right, already the first lie. Yeah, I had some friends.
Yes. So apparently he and his friends were admirers of Castro, Fidel Castro in 1958. And they admired the way he organized the guerrilla force against Batista, and they wanted to do something like that, but then they figure out, oh, god damn it, he's a communist.
So that wasn't clear?
No. And then, so they said, okay, we need, in case of a communist invasion, we need to do what they do, have our own guerrilla. Apparently, for some reason, some duck hunters are always mentioned in this story. A bunch of them were duck hunters. And which is interesting, and that's something that I will later mention. Duck hunting appears also in the Oliver Stone's JFK film.
In the morning, we went goose hunting.
You bagging the geese on this trip?
I believe the boys got a couple.
But the boys told us they didn't get any.
And a few characters here that we'll mention are also characters in that movie. And duck hunting also appears.
That's right, people. This is Tenet Pod's JFK episode. We surprised you.
Yes.
Those of you who stuck around this long.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, apparently, they were duck hunters, and while hunting ducks, some of them said, "Yeah, we should really start the guerrilla group." Something. This is why duck hunting is mentioned there.
Does this give me another idea for a fascist video game reskin?
Yes. What they decided to do is to start stockpiling weapons in case of a communist invasion, and that's something that they did consistently. He was always full of weapons, explosives, all kinds of stuff. So they at the time he supposedly the Pew formed something which was called the Executive Council, which was the secret leadership of the Minutemen. Apparently 10 men, and that never existed. that was the leadership of the group that he answered to as a national coordinator, but that never existed. Although some people were told they were members of it, in fact, it never existed really. And he was the sole national coordinator of the Minutemen the whole time. And soon after that, they really came to this conclusion that the US government is already communist, and that they also need to deal with this fact. The name, interestingly enough, was inspired by a JFK speech, like an early one, in which he said that like something, he used the phrase, "We need a nation of Minutemen," or something like that. And the Pew was inspired by that, and this is why, although JFK would soon become one of their main enemies, the name was actually inspired by his speech.
There were Minutemen missiles, right, too? I think nuclear missiles that were as well.
Possibly. I don't know. Yeah. So they were probably formed in June of 1960. Although I'm really, with a group like this, I'm not sure if they were ever really formed. Like, because as we'll talk about their structure in which is like, I'm not sure if you can call it like that. So when they were formed, soon after that, in October of 1961, they did a public exercise, like a military exercise in this place called Shiloh, Illinois. And he immediately called the press to take photos and film them with weapons and so on. So they were that kind of like group, really existed.
How many people are we talking at that point then?
This is like no one knows, including them. I will talk about that a little bit. Also, what they were connected to, according to the Pew, were Cuban American anti-communist groups at the time, like the group Alpha 66. So they were like doing stuff with them. It's never completely clear what exactly, but like gun running and so on. And I mean, if you talk about Cuban American, anti-communists, you're already basically talking about the government and CIA and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's very clear. And also, so we come here to one of our first characters from the Oliver Stone film, JFK, which is Guy Bannister, who was a confirmed member of the Minutemen and also like one of their coordinators in New Orleans.
Played by Ed Asner in this podcast.
Yeah, who'd ever thought that goofy Oswald kid would pull a stunt like an assassination? Just goes to show you never can know about some people. Am I right, Jack? Yeah. Am I right, Jack?
Yeah, he's the guy in the film who beats up his friend Jack Lemmon. Guy Bannister was a confirmed FBI employee and a right winger connected to all kinds of things.
Wait, employee or informant?
Employee.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah. And he was according to Oliver Stone and a lot of other people, closely connected to Lee Harvey Oswald, and who, in the film, and a lot of these theories imply that Lee Harvey Oswald basically worked directly for Guy Bannister. For example, he was giving out these supposed communist leaflets because he was apparently infiltrating the communist movement or the pro-Castro movement, Oswald, I mean. And the leaflets, for some reason, had the address of Guy Bannister's office on it, which was a headquarters of the CIA-connected anti-communist movement in New Orleans. So some people, including some people who were in the Minutemen, think that maybe Lee Harvey Oswald was also a member of the Minutemen. They don't know this for sure because of their structure. So the structure of their organizing was that, they had one national coordinator, which was the Pew. They had a non-existent executive council. So basically he was the main guy. And what he was a publisher of their, magazine called On Target, and he had a few people around him. And then he would be in contact with regional directors, which they later called state coordinators. So it's never clear how many of these people were there, at least 10, I guess. Although later they claimed they had one in each state, which is probably not true. And these were people who were in charge of a state or a region. And they were in contact with the Pew. And under them, there were unit leaders. And each unit leader was responsible for a group of people, which was anything from 5 to 25 people. And, so if someone, because they ran ads, basically, that they were looking for members. And if you contacted Depew, he would direct you to a local regional leader. But if someone joined by contacting a unit leader or a regional leader, the Depew was never informed who these people were who joined. So no one really knew how many of them were there. There was no chain of command, and this was like a deliberate thing because they believed that this is like essential to guerrilla warfare, which is like not true.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
No. So basically, no one of them knew. They had no chain command, and no one knew who were members or how many members they had. They also like said that they encouraged people not to give them real names. So sometimes they would even know like the real names of some regional leaders and such things. So basically, anyone could join.
I guess it sounds a lot like the Silver Shirts to me right now, like how they organized. And part of what showed that they were a scam was something very similar in that you didn't have like nobody really knew how many people were Silver Shirts. Not really. It didn't really matter. What mattered is people were sending money for the uniform, sending money for the membership, sending money for the literature. Is this also the case of the Minutemen? Are we looking at like a money-making scheme here too?
It seems that this is not the case because Depew was a millionaire. And it seems that he went bankrupt financing this operation.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's kind of the reverse thing.
Okay.
But this was also, of course, ideal for government infiltration. Even if I'm not sure even if we can call it infiltration. It's basically they were the co-founders of the group. Because, for example, early on, Depew was approached by a group of Minutemen. Like he often wouldn't know there was a group of Minutemen somewhere, and they approached him, and he visited them, and he said they were like much more trained than anyone else was, and like had a lot of equipment, and they were basically reserved army officers who had their own Minutemen group, like highly trained, equipped, and everything. And then he says something like, they used us as a front because they wanted to grow, but we grew much more because we were like had like this advertisement and we did things publicly. But I don't think that was the purpose of that group approaching them. I think it was like some kind of a way of para-government or government structures being in control of the group and not really recruiting people, but just being there. It's my guess. But yeah, so they had all kinds of people there, including not only like government informants, but whole groups of Minutemen who were FBI, CIA, or Army people. Yeah, and I will come back to that a bit later as well. So they claim that this kind of like non-existence of any chain of command is like was done on purpose because this saved them from government infiltration. It doesn't make any sense at all. Most members who joined were like almost instantly, in a matter of days, known to authorities because of large numbers of informants or agents who were members, but also because these people like just talk to cops with no filter about everything all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it seems like there's some kind of funny contradiction there, in that you have like a highly clandestine kind of organizational structure, yet you're doing everything extremely publicly, engaging the media and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a completely.
I mean, it's contradiction.
Negates the purpose of,
or it's
like,
not.
A clandestine structure.
To me, it's obvious that this is like a para-state structure. I mean,
right?
Yeah. So, about how many members they had, like no one really knows, including Depew. So one DA in 1966 estimated there's 10,000 of them. This is like, I think, way too much.
Okay.
Hoover said in 68 there is only 500 of them. FBI officially estimated there was between 800 and 2,000 of them, but it's probably like in the hundreds or maybe low thousands. But Depew loved this mystery that no one knows how many of them there are.
Sure, yeah, we know a couple other people like that.
Yeah, he thought that this is like a part of their strategy to confuse the enemy and so on. He also claimed that there was like 20% of female members, which is like, how would he know? There's no way of him knowing that, and also there's no way that this is true. later, like although they first had this strategy of like anyone can join, don't give us our name, whatever, we don't care. So later, through like their publication on Target, they would send out forms for members to fill out. And this time they would, like this was a few years later, they would not only require your name, but also your photo, your social security number, like a bunch of other information.
What are they joining the base?
Yeah. So yeah, not suspicious at all.
Right.
So
we're talking like 62 right now. Where are we on the timeline?
This
63.
I'm going a bit, through the years. They were founded in 1960. This questionnaire was like 66, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'm just like making a point how they were a government operation. I think. Like,
yeah.
Depew was basically the editor of the main publication. He was also some kind of an ideologue. He wrote 3 books, I think. One was called Blueprint for Victory. This was published in 1960. I think this is basically a book about how to organize anti-communist guerrilla resistance. Then there was a next book was called Can You Survive? This was like a survivalist book. Like it was not so much about combat. It was about just surviving in the wilderness. And then he wrote a third book, which is a bit different, which was called Beyond the Iron Mask. This was after he was imprisoned. And then he wrote a book criticizing the prison system in the US.
Interesting.
Which was like a bit strange.
I'm kind of curious as to what his critiques of the prison system
he realized that it was like an unjust system, but still, he still had his social Darwinist views. I don't know. I haven't read the book. I don't know how you can have a social Darwinist critique of the American prison
is
system.
bad, but only for me. It's okay for some people.
Yeah. So their publication was like unbelievably, like it was mainly anti-communist. Like he was obviously a racist, but like racism, like implicit racism was not like the focus of their politics as much as like, for example, compared to American Nazi Party or something like this. I mean, obviously they were like white people's organization. And he said like on a few occasions how, black people are not capable of voting intelligently and how their participation in the government is just a part of a communist subversion. He didn't say Jews, but
that's my question. Yeah, because this is clearly taken over the mantle of the secret Zionist conspiracy taking over the government, and now it's a secret communist conspiracy.
He says
and that transition happened here.
You will see that even more explicitly soon.
Okay,
but it's mostly anti-communist stuff, and extremely paranoid stuff concerning communists. So, communist infiltration of the U.S. government, specifically the Kennedy administration, and then all kinds of random stuff, like texts about how, it is possible that dozens of like small atomic bombs are being placed now across the U.S.
The dirty bomb.
Yes, waiting for, to be detonated by communists, I guess, or something like this.
Nice.
So, there was also a bunch of Klan people who joined them at some point.
Surprise.
One of them was a guy called Roy Frankhauser, who was a Grand Dragon of the KKK in Pennsylvania. And he became a regional coordinator for, I think, Pennsylvania first. Also a government informant, like most of these people.
All right.
At some point, American Nazi Party lost a bunch of members to Minutemen. So there was like a lot of hate between two groups. Depew hated George Lincoln Rockwell. I will come back to that question. And also there is some interesting thing about Rockwell's assassination and the Minutemen. So they even wrote like completely crazy things, how, many people can become communists without even knowing it. For example, that was one team. And now what Fritz mentioned before, they frequently wrote about a hidden communist government existing in the United States.
It's COG.
Yes. So they identified about 25 to 30 people who were members of the hidden communist government, and they marked them for assassination. Like they had like in their organization, they had this idea that they just want to kill these people. The idea that they shared...
just to tie something in, this takes us also back to our Christian identity episode. This is where you had people like William Potter Gale and Wesley Swift
Right.
They were also implicated in this list and all of that. And also, similarly, untouched, as I imagine a lot of these people will be.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you will see that. It's quite amazing. Interesting that they would say that they wanted to execute these people when the Hitler government takes power openly, which doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you do it only then? I mean, if it only exists now. So I don't know. Apparently, that was a part of the strategy at some point. And the Pew believed that this time frame when the communist government will come out of the shadow would be something in between 1984 and 1991. So, I mean, there's no reason for that, except, I guess, 1984, George Orwell, somehow he figured out George Orwell was a prophet or something. I don't know. So just he took that randomly. Right. 1984 is a year when the hidden communist government will, take power openly. In 1966, they formed a patriotic party. That was the name, Patriotic Party. The idea was to unite the right wing, but also to infiltrate the Republican and Democratic Party. So they were basically doing what they thought the Communist Party was doing, infiltrating.
Right. Like they always fucking do. Yeah.
Yes, that was their idea. So the Patriotic Party held, we know, at least 2 national conventions, both in Kansas City in 66 and 67. First one in the U Smile Motel and the other one in the Townhouse Motor Inn. And in 68, they nominated George Wallace for president.
Right.
The Pew also didn't like George Wallace, but he was thinking, okay, that's, I guess, the best we can do at the moment. At the time, he was also investigated by IRS for using biolab funds to finance the Minutemen in an illegal way, which is what he did, in fact. Everyone says that. So, as I said, he didn't really like anyone, and so the Minutemen didn't really get along with other right-wing groups. And they were also really, a big part of their activities were threatening public officials. That was their thing.
All right.
In 1965, in their On Target publication, they threatened 20 congressmen. And so they said something like the text ended with crosshairs, meaning their symbol, the crosshairs of the telescopic.
Yeah, right. I think it's implied in the name On Target that a crosshair will be featured prominently in their logo.
Yes. Yeah. So they said crosshairs are on the backs of your necks. And they printed a sticker at the time, which said, and I'll have to find it now.
Let's see it. Do you have a picture of it?
No, only text.
Oh, what kind of a book is that?
Not a picture book, Fritz.
It's not a great book. I won't even mention it.
I just thought of another duck hunting connection. Dick Cheney. Right? Isn't that what he shot his friend? He was duck hunting.
Yeah. Duck hunt is always code.
Yeah, there's always some fuckery going on when there's some duck hunting.
Okay, so this is what the Minutemen sticker said at the time where they were threatening the congressman. See the old man at the corner where you buy your papers? He may have a silencer-equipped pistol under his coat. The extra fountain pen in the pocket of the insurance salesman who calls on you might be a cyanide gas gun. Uh-huh. What about your milkman? Arsenic works slow but sure. Your auto mechanic may stay up nights studying booby traps. These patriots are not going to let you take their freedom away from them. They have learned the silent knife, the strangler's cord, the target rifle that hits sparrows at 20 yards. Traitors beware. Even now the crosshairs are on the back of your necks.
I feel like I saw that scene in Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that kind of stuff. So the Pew listed, in one of his books, he listed 75 people that he said were members of communist groups. He didn't say what should be done with them, but it implied.
I mean, their logo is a target. So.
Yes. So some of the people he listed were Lucille Ball, Charlie Chaplin.
What? He wanted to kill Lucy?
Yes. Charlie Chaplin, Humphrey Bogart, Frank Sinatra, Rita Hayworth, Katharine Hepburn, and so on.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra, famous communist.
Yeah. So all of this kind of stuff kind of led to an public outcry against the Minutemen.
Yeah, he wanted to kill Lucy.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with him?
And threatened a lot of politicians, which wasn't. Yeah, they didn't like.
They didn't like that, but they're not gonna stand for him fucking with Charlie Chaplin.
Yes.
So, politicians, whatever.
So Robert Kennedy asked, like, I think his friends called Walter and Victor Reuter, like, to make some kind of a plan. What should we do with the right wing and specifically with the Minutemen? So Walter Reuter was the head of the United Automobile Workers Labor Union, and Victor was his brother, who was like also involved in that union. So they authored something which was later called the Reuter Memorandum, and which was leaked to the press. And they came up with a lot of solutions how to deal with the right wing, specifically with the Minutemen. So, for example, the ideas were like to revoke their tax exempt status, like, which is like, why would they even have that? I don't know.
Because they have churches. They all have fucking churches.
Okay. To use IRS to like have more scrutiny or on their tax returns and contributions by businessmen, to try to limit their like airtime, to use FBI to infiltrate them. And basically they had some sentence that said like, this is the way we get rid of Minutemen, something like this. And when the press got hold of it, like Depew loved that. Like that was like the best thing ever for him, because that was proof that he's an important extremist figure in the United States, and also that there is a liberal conspiracy against the right wing. It gave them a lot of publicity. That was the best thing for him ever.
The conspiracy to remove our tax exempt status. Gotta kill Lucille Ball.
Yes. So in the early 60s, many officials like spoke against the Minutemen publicly, like governors, senators, and so on. Even JFK, he didn't mention them by name, but he mentioned like armed bands in some of his speeches that referred to Minutemen. And of course, the press really wrote a lot about all of that, and they were in a way a big ally of Minutemen. Like press really made them really much more of a thing that they in reality were, because
the press took them seriously. I take it then. It wasn't like in a mocking tone, like who are these idiots? Like
no.
Ill-advised press, ill-advised.
Yes. And Depew was always available to the press. Like whenever they wanted to talk to him, they could. And he often invited them and such things. Okay, so in 1965, Depew got into a little bit of trouble. So there were just these two girls, Patricia Beale and Linda Judd. Linda was 16 and Patricia was 21.
God, why do I have a feeling I know where this is going?
Yes. They lived together. Linda, she ran away from her parents, and she lived with Patricia, who was 5 years older than her. And so someone at some point, I'm not sure if it was their landlord or someone, approached them and said, like, listen, if you start working for the Minutemen, you won't have any problems with paying your rent, something like that. And they were like, not really interested. So what happened then was that Robert Depew visited them personally, together with also a young girl called Cindy Melville. Cindy Melville, I'm not sure how old she was, but her mother was very upset that she was with the Minutemen, and she tried to get her home, saying how she's being manipulated, brainwashed by the Minutemen and so on, but she didn't manage to do that. Maybe she was not a minor anymore, I'm not sure, but she stayed with Depew.
Getting mad Mason vibes out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, of course. I mean, it's worse than Mason. So Depew visited them, and then he tried to persuade them, together with Cindy, to become members. They said no. So what did Depew did then? He kidnapped them. So
Jesus.
He kidnapped them and held them captive for 2 weeks. While they were held captive, there was also a fourth now young woman there called Mary Tollerton, who was apparently also connected to Minutemen, who was like keeping them company there. So while they were there, they were like involved in studying Minutemen stuff, and one area of study was how to use sex against the enemy.
Oh no! No!
Yes, and they fortunately managed to escape after 2 weeks, and then they went to the cops, and the cops were skeptical. They didn't believe them, what happened, and then they had to go through a polygraph, and they passed the polygraph, so they were telling the truth. But Depew was tipped off before the cops came to his compound. probably by cops. I don't imagine.
Right, I was about to say there's
Who would
probably
else
a
do that?
significant. Yeah.
So
they were already going there anyway. So
yes, so he canceled like a training exercise they were supposed to do. They managed to, hid most of their weapons, explosives they had, but still cops found out automatic weapons and a landmine.
cops who were like definitely trying not to search, nonetheless, found a landmine and some automatic weapons.
The fuck did they get a landmine?
It was on the kitchen table, guys. Come on, what do you want me to do?
But Depew was on the run. He was nowhere to be found, and FBI was like getting ready to search for him, but he surrendered, and he posted bond and just walked off free. So he was indicted by a grand jury for possession of a bomb, and listen to this: contributing to a
The delinquency of a minor.
delinquency of a minor.
Yeah.
So that was like his charge. There was no kidnapping charge at all. And after a year, all charges were dropped.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Man, to be a government-connected millionaire terrorist, right? In the 60s.
Yeah, I was about to say that having those government connects does wonders when you kidnap children and
Jesus.
And
take them and roll them in your how to use sex against the enemy course, which is definitely not just like our fun little game thing.
Yes. I mean, totally, yes. Not only that, but the whole time he was also under subpoena to give evidence to the government about the finances and membership or membership of the Minutemen, which he refused to do, which was already like enough for him to go to jail. Like,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But nothing happened also about that as well. So
you can't say no to a fucking subpoena. That's what it is.
yes.
Right.
So he was kidnapping people while under subpoena that he refused to,
Amazing.
Yes.
Because he is a sovereign citizen, Ray, okay?
Yes.
The laws do not apply to him.
So in '66, Depew and two other members of the Minutemen were accused of transferring, making, receiving, and possessing automatic weapons and silencers. They were arrested by a U.S. Marshal after like their car was stopped. And Cindy Melville, the young girl that was with them, apparently attacked an IRS agent who was like, I guess, there at the time.
Yeah, fuck you, tax man.
Yeah.
Cindy's their version of, what's the woman from the Symbionese Liberation Army?
Hearst or
Patty Hearst. Yeah, she's like their Patty Hearst.
So there was a trial, and two Minutemen were witnesses at the trial. So I guess they were just because they were working for the government. So they, I guess, witnessed against Depew or something. So Depew got 4 years of prison, but 2 counts were dismissed on appeal, and 3rd count got a retrial. So nothing happened there as well. Then about that time, something else happened. He was pulled over, and they found a .38 caliber revolver with him, and he was charged with transporting firearms across state lines while under indictment, and he got 1 year of prison for that. And then he disappeared. Because what else happened then was that he was charged for a conspiracy to rob banks, and he just decided to disappear. And he was a federal fugitive for 1.5 years.
Okay.
He hid with a bunch of his people. He hid in a town in New Mexico, which was called Truth and Consequence.
Truth and Consequences, yeah, absolutely.
He was hiding there, rented a house with his people and using fake names.
What year is this?
This is like 66 or 67. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
So he ran away because he was in charge of conspiracy to rob banks. And in 68, in January, FBI arrested 7 Minutemen because of this charge, and but he was not among them. He was hiding in Truth and Consequence. So the idea, like the charge, was that they conspired to rob banks in the Seattle area, and their plan was to blow up bombs at a police station and a power plant as a diversion while they rob banks. Depew got he was all charges against him were dropped in connection to this. Eventually, he was arrested at Truth and Consequence in July of '69. Apparently, they were using this disguise at the time, and he was disguised as a hippie.
All right.
So when he was arrested and his whole group, there was like a bunch of weapons and explosives with them.
Why the fuck would he? Why not just disguise yourself as like a normal person? Why disguise yourself as the object of police rage?
Because he's an idiot, obviously.
Yes.
And so he got 4 years of prison for bond jumping and 10 years for violation of federal arms status. But he was paroled after 4 years. So he served, after all of this, served like 4 years in prison.
Amazing. Wow.
Yes. After he served prison, he returned to work at Biolab. So there were other people at the time. I mean, this was basically towards the end now of Minutemen. I guess government had enough of them. They killed JFK. There's no use really for them anymore.
So they did JFK. Let's just be clear on this.
Yeah. So a bunch of other members of theirs also got into trouble. So one of them was Jerry Brooks, who was a guy who was directly connected to Guy Bannister in New Orleans. He was also a government informant. I mean, there's almost no one here who isn't a government informant. But he testified against himself that he had a plan to put cyanide in the AC system at the UN and just kill anyone there. But he was never charged.
That's why Ceausescu refused to have an AC in the parliamentary palace.
Yeah, so the Minutemen don't kill
exactly because of that shit. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So in New York State in '66, 19 Minutemen were arrested for conspiracy to commit arson by throwing firebombs at 2 pacifist and leftist camps, and also at the headquarters of some leftist who was running for Congress. This was like a huge raid. There was like an incredible amount of weapons and ammunition found there. All charges were dismissed because of a defective warrant. So no one was arrested for that. So these are basically like terrorist groups that you have a bunch of informants in, and you know that they want to kill people, burn people, and like you are constantly finding them with like a crazy amount of explosives, weapons, and no one gets charged for anything. And this guy got 4 years of prison after he kidnapped children and organized a series of bank robberies while planning to bomb police stations and power plants and so on. So yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
So this is basically his story.
Can I ask about his because we talked about this long British-Israeli arc in this in our arc, and I'm wondering if this guy, because what about stuff like taxes and the ideology of the economy? Did he take this Christian identity idea of?
Well, you asked this at the perfect moment because I was just about to say, while he was in Minutemen, he had no use for any kind of Christians. He really hated Christians.
Okay.
But apparently, after this whole ordeal and the Minutemen broke up, he did go into Christian identity direction.
Interesting. So, yeah. I
don't know much about it. There's not much information, but apparently he was into Christian identity later. It was probably not a very genuine thing. I think he was just figured out that this is a new thing and he wanted to find his place there. I don't think
these people are crazy too.
All the cool Nazis were doing it at the time. Yeah. I get it.
Yes.
But what about we were talked a little bit about the California Rangers and that they were also a part of the larger Minutemen organization. But that's, they're openly Christian. I wonder how.
No, but they were so the Minutemen, because they had this no structure basically. There were all kinds of extreme right-wing people there.
So these are tribes essentially run by some sort of war
so they
chief
were
or something.
Nazis. They were KKK people, but some say that the majority of them were John Birch society types, a lot of dentists, lawyers, doctors, those types of people. Who wanted to play war and stuff like that.
I'm scared of everybody you just mentioned.
There were also people, the Americans who call themselves libertarians. Those types of people were there.
Yeah, we know those types of people.
There were also Ayn Rand type of people.
So anarchists.
Yeah, yes. Don't say that. So all kinds
yes,
of
that
things.
is a joke, people.
Yes. So yeah, libertarians and yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah, that does not mean the same thing
No.
that it does in America and
In the
Anywhere
rest of
else,
the world.
yes.
Yeah.
in the entire rest of the world. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll come back to that a bit later. So I just want to talk about what happened to him in '91. So in '91, DPU was 68 years old, and he was arrested for what? You have one attempt to guess.
Oh, man. Well, if only he had
um,
a hard drive full of kitty porn, but it's too early for that, so I'm going pedophilia.
No, that's exactly that.
Pedophilia.
No. See, he was arrested because they found 1,000 photos of naked minors with him.
All right, the equivalent. Yeah.
So he
Of
was
course.
charged of a sexual exploitation of a minor. What he did was he told it was only single mothers that he approached, and he told them that their kids had potential to become models. And
Oh,
then,
classic.
God.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
then he would take naked pictures of them. The kids were 10 to 13 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
When they arrested him, they found a bunch of guns, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and also radio-controlled detonation equipment with him. And there, at his premise, like at his compound in Norborn, there was also a photographic darkroom. So he was
So he was developing all the kitty porn.
Yes.
The perfect Nazi.
They found so much
Yeah.
explosive that it could have leveled the whole town of Norborn there.
Jesus.
So
Damn.
the people in Norborn didn't like that. He was
Yeah,
he,
they were
he
annoyed.
had, he had like 3 additional charges of sexual exploitation of a minor, but he got 30 months of prison for that. His defense was that he's very sick. He won't live long more. He lived, I think, 18 years more.
Damn.
And
Goddamn.
he was never convicted of any kind of sexual stuff against minors. That was
Wow.
just
So
not
he
the
had thousands of pictures of child porn.
yes.
And enough explosives to blow up the town. That
He went.
You know, I gotta hand it
$9,000
to the good townsfolk of Norborn. They seem like they weren't having this shit from the beginning.
Yeah.
And respect. I don't know. I don't know anything much about that town. Maybe they were even more racist than he was.
We don't know.
But it sounds
know.
like it was
somebody
like
from Norborn hit us up.
Sounds like it was a pretty okay town though.
Yeah.
They didn't like this fucking asshole.
They were all Wiccan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he got. He wasn't convicted for the kid stuff. He got 30 months of prison for having enough explosives to blow up the whole town. And yeah.
That's still not very much, man. I know people that have gone away for very like minor things for much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. 30
What a
months. I'm saying.
fucking this was what, 1991?
91. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's before Oklahoma City,
Yeah.
which probably made a big difference in the whole stockpiling lots and lots of explosives
Yeah. I mean.
thing. But yeah.
Maybe
So
better
for
to
bo-
say this was leading up to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, correct.
So when he was arrested for child porn stuff, this was like even people who were close to him left him. So he died in 2009.
Damn.
He lived alone in an apartment. He left Norborn. He lived in, I think, in Montana. His wife left him. His children didn't talk to him. And he was 86 when he died. There was no funeral held at his request, and donations were solicited to pay for the costs of the funeral. So he lived completely alone. No one cared about him.
Not good enough.
So
Fucking loser.
I also want to talk about. So that's this idiot. I want to talk about one other leader which is also very interesting guy of the Minutemen. Basically, the only other national coordinator that ever existed. And through his perspective, we'll also talk a bit more about the PU as well. I think it's interesting. So the other guy is called Robert N. Taylor. So he's much younger. He was born in Chicago in 1945. He was 14 when he joined the Minutemen. So this was
Child
like
soldier.
yeah. This was at the beginning of Minutemen in 1960. And he was a member for 12 years. He was basically the guy who dissolved this organization that really never, in my opinion, really existed. But he officially dissolved it, whatever that means. He's a ridiculous guy. Like, I guess he's active today as well. He's seen as a kind of a like I guess a fascist. He's one of those also who would be offended to us calling him fascist. Robert Depew considered himself an individualist. Robert N. Taylor considers himself a libertarian. But he's like he's seen, I guess, as a right-wing intellectual.
He looks like a bit of a mystic.
Yeah, he's
like
like an alternative looking, like old school kind of alternative person. Like he's an old dude now with a beard and long hair, and he's a poet and a musician and so on.
Yeah.
And he's kind of he sounds like an American racist grandfather, I would say. Like I listened to a few interviews to him. He doesn't sound like a psycho, but like a kind of a crazy racist grandfather who doesn't realize how horribly racist he is. He thinks he's not. I would say. And he's kind of he's like someone who fancies himself as an intellectual. He's kind of a dumbass, I would say, because he thinks that the Minutemen are the victims of COINTELPRO.
Right.
So after all of this, like that he knows firsthand, like he thinks that they were like victims of COINTELPRO, like, and government infiltration. But basically, you can see that they were like started by the government, and then like most of them never went to jail. Even they did like even to compare it like to what happened to groups like Black Panthers or MOVE or something like that.
Right,
like, can you imagine that any of those groups did any of things that these people did? What would I mean, this is like. But this is how far removed he is from reality. He even says like it was not only right wing. We have to be honest and admit. The left was also targeted by the.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah,
great.
So
he's really like up there with Fred Hampton and people killed in their apartments in a hail of
He even says
gunfire,
at some point we were tipped off that we're going to get killed. And he says, like those people, like Fred Hampton, like people who were just murdered by. He has this kind of anti-state moment, like he thinks that Fred Hampton was a victim of the state, and he says like they would kill us like they killed those people, but we got tipped off. Like, but you got tipped off, like whatever.
You got tipped off, and nothing ever happened to you. So clearly,
man, if that FBI agent hadn't tipped us off.
Yes.
If all my friends in the police called me,
yes, he says that he much later figured out they were full of feds. So he's the guy who in '68, when Depew was a fugitive, he went underground with him. So this was like a horrible situation where Depew's paranoia really took over. So they were fighting each other, and Depew had he suspected everyone was a traitor, and so Robert Taylor was friends with Depew's son, who was also very young, and they decided to split because they figured out that Depew is going to start killing now people who are with him hiding, and he will tell them to do it. Like he will ask his son and Robert Taylor to kill these other Minutemen because he thinks they're communists and traitors and so on. And they were like, okay, we're not going to kill now our fellow Minutemen here. So they basically escaped from him. And then he tried to kill them. And he, like Robert Taylor says that like Robert Depew, like his men tried to kill him a few times. Like that he almost was killed by his people. And by the way, when he was arrested there after his son and Robert Taylor split, when he was arrested in Truth and Consequence, the FBI agents there found two people who were like members of the Minutemen, one woman and one man, who were held in confinement crates.
Oh, damn.
Oh, shit.
Because Depew thought that they were traitors.
Jesus.
Yes. But after Depew was arrested, Robert Taylor kind of patched up his friendship with Depew, and he testified on his behalf in his trial. And he basically took over, and he became the national coordinator of the Minutemen in the end there when Depew was in prison. And he said that everyone who remained in contact with him at that point from the Minutemen, all of them were FBI people.
Uh-huh.
Like he said, basically we didn't have members who were not feds at that point. So, but somehow they're victims of COINTELPRO,
Right.
Right.
So one of the last things that he did, Taylor, was that he basically had like some kind of communique to members in the early 70s where he said to them, like, you should disperse. Like, there won't be Minutemen anymore or national coordination. You should start your own local militia groups. And
would that have been 72 by chance when J. Edgar Hoover died?
I think it was like, yes, end of 71. He says end of,
okay. All right.
Yes, end of 71.
Yeah, the boss is not long for this world.
Yeah. So Robert Taylor, after that, he was like really bummed out and depressed. And he turned to art, as he says. So with his cousin, he started a horrible, horrible band called Changes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yes. You've made me listen to this when you were first saying we should make a podcast.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk of revolution, impending civil war. Enjoy the right time.
Yes.
Oh, God.
So this is a folk band that, unlike the folk bands of the time, they decided, of course, to have right-wing lyrics about, decline of Western civilization and such things, which didn't make them popular at all. He says they had no audience, no one liked them. I mean, they're a shit band, and they had, lyrics about the decline of Western civilization. No one wanted to listen to that. They apparently had some connection with the Protestant Church of the Final Judgment, which is that's a whole other thing that we'll have to talk about at some point.
Absolutely.
But at that time, they played at their like coffee houses. Like those are the only people who wanted to listen to them. And then he was rediscovered in 1990s by a guy that we mentioned before called Michael Moynihan, who's like a fascist, arty asshole who does things like this. So he's the same person who made Siege into a book.
Right.
He's the guy who wrote the
Lords of
Chaos book about the Norwegian black metal scene. And he's the guy who rediscovered this asshole and his band Changes and republished it in 1990s and made it a kind of a cult band among neo-folk fasci types. So Changes in the 2000s, they
were idiots also. Yes, fuck neo-folk. I'm sorry. Somebody recently commented on us talking shit on neo-folk. Yes. Fuck neo-folk. Yes. Boring ass genre. I'm gonna say that now. Fuck that shit.
Yes. And exactly. So Changes in the 2000s, like just a few years ago, they toured, with I think also with Death in June and all those types of bands. Their gigs were protested by Antifa groups and so on. And like Taylor was like why? Like he doesn't see the problem. Like what's the problem there? With us. He was also one of 3 founders of the Asatru movement in North America. So which is basically the Odinists, like Germanic pagan groups. He also fought against the feminist influence in the pagan movement. He's very much against that. Of course.
Yeah, one of the only cool things about the pagan movement, of course, he had to stop.
He thinks that the Odinism is the Germanic people are basically somehow genetically predisposed for them to be their religion, which is like a very non-Nazi thing to think. And he also came to the conclusion that Western civilization is already dead, like a lot of Nazis in this period. And what they're doing through, things like Asatru or the neo-folk scene and I guess the books and poetry that he writes, what they're doing is they're laying the cultural roots for a civilization that will come after, something like this. That's their mission.
Mm-hmm. I can just see them all sitting around the fire while he tells myths of the old lands,
Yeah.
Monica Lewinsky was a Mossad agent.
I mean, he's that was like more debut. This guy was not exactly like that. He's he evolved into a different kind of fucked up fascist, I would say, like a more kind of I don't know, like this. He now he reads Evola and he's into that stuff.
Yeah,
and so. I will also now finish about his views. We'll go back now, and he will maybe give a bit different perspective on what the Minutemen were for the end, just briefly. It's interesting. So he says, so he was 14, 15 years when he joined. And he says that they had CIA agents, like he says CIA agents, from the beginning. And he's still confused, like, were they there because they were infiltrating or because they were, like, genuine members of the Minutemen?
Right.
And which also, I mean, tells you a lot about this organization, that he's not really sure were the CIA people infiltrating or just ordinary members there.
Yes.
And so one of the first national meetings, or maybe the first national meeting that he attended, was in Norborn in 1960. He was like 14, 15 years old. It was only around 20 people. That was basically the leadership of the Minutemen at the time. And two people who attended were Clay Shaw and David Ferry. So again, we're going back to the Oliver Stone JFK film. Clay Shaw, that's Tommy Lee Jones in the film.
I would imagine that a uniform waiter helps.
It adds a taste of elegance, for which I must confess a weakness now and then. I call him Smedley.
And David Ferry, that's Joe Pesci.
Who did the president? Who killed Kennedy? Fuck, man! It's a mystery! It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma!
Yeah.
So Clay Shaw was confirmed to have been a CIA asset. And David Ferry was his associate. So they were basically in the Minutemen leadership, according to one of the leaders of the Minutemen. He says that he only saw them that time once, never saw them again, but they were there.
But that's not particularly surprising given the the structure of the Minutemen.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah, right.
Of course. So he also says something about how what they were doing at the time. So, for example, they would start a fake committee to support some communist leaders who were repressed or imprisoned at the time. So they would receive support from communist sympathizers writing to them because they thought they were writing to some communist group. So they would get a lot of information about some communist sympathizers in the region or something like that. That type of thing. He was also the guy who was in charge of intelligence there, and he says that a lot of information he got from New Orleans. It was like an unbelievable amount of press clipping he got from New Orleans. He wasn't even able to go through all of it, and he thinks that came from the Guy Bannister office, who had he hired a secretary just to do press clipping for him. And that person also, by the way, shows up in the film, the Guy Bannister secretary. So he thinks that he was receiving stuff from her. He also talks about a Minutemen member, which was called George DeMerle, who Taylor says infiltrated a communist group in New York City on behalf of the Minutemen. So this is a group...
this is all very stay-behind type activity. Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
So this is the group that this supposed Minutemen infiltrated and was a member for 6 years, Taylor says, is a group of Sam Melville, who was later accused of being a conspirator in some bombing campaign and was imprisoned, and then was the key figure in the 71 Attica prison riots.
Okay.
So, but this is guy basically who put him to prison, this Minuteman. So Taylor says that their guy kind of found out about these bombing plans, and then he didn't know what to do, and then he consulted with Taylor. He went to see him, and what Taylor told him, you should snitch these people to the FBI. That was what he said, which he did. And all of these people got arrested, and so this guy became the Minuteman. George DeMerle became a hero. He was in front rows of 1st of July parades and so on for
snitching.
Yes, for snitching. And FBI claimed that he was still in history books. He's an FBI informer. He's an FBI officially an FBI infiltrator in a communist group.
This is bizarre.
But Taylor thinks that this is not true, that he was a Minuteman. He said they made it up that he was an FBI man.
Yeah,
but I mean, he obviously doesn't know what's going on. I mean, probably, he was an FBI person who infiltrated the communist group and also the Minutemen.
Yes.
Or maybe he did Minutemen just for fun because he shared the views. Or
yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they even now really can't have a clear view of what they did, I would say, even though the things they say really kind of paint a really clear picture of what they were. But it's interesting, just a few details about how he sees Depew. So Robert Taylor says that, in his opinion, Robert Depew was a textbook psychopath. He says that, like from what he later learned about psychology, he had all the traits of what defines a psychopath. So he doesn't go into details, but you can imagine. And he says that he had no empathy for victims and nothing like that at all. He also mentions that at some point Depew told him how he went to see a Minutemen group in Texas that contacted him. And when he went there, he was impressed by, they had like a very sophisticated compound. They were all highly trained, and that he thought that they were probably government connected. And then he stayed over for the night. And then when he went to bed, he wanted to go out to, get something from the car. And he noticed that he was locked in his room. And then he escaped through a window. And he was convinced that this was like some kind of CIA group. It was basically part of Minutemen. Also,
but the door just jammed.
Yeah, Robert Taylor
crawls out the window, runs away half naked into the night.
Robert Taylor also thinks that it's quite possible that Oswald was a member through Bannister. Then there's this whole story about their Minutemen leader in California called Troy Houghton. So Troy Houghton is a guy, you can also often see him in pictures together with Depew. He disappeared. And he disappeared right before the Martin Luther King assassination. And it was speculated in the newspapers of the time that he is behind the Martin Luther King assassination. And even Robert Taylor, when he heard that MLK was assassinated, he wasn't sure that it wasn't them who killed him. There are also people today who believe that Troy Houghton was the Zodiac killer. There's like a whole website about that. People are very much into it. But what Robert Taylor says was that Robert Depew told him that he killed Troy Houghton. He said, like, we executed him. And Troy's wife would like send letters to their compound every day asking where's my husband. And by the end, like, even Depew's wife was pretty much convinced that Depew got him killed for some reason. So that's that. Also, Taylor says that Depew confirmed to him before he was arrested for the bank robbery plan that he is planning that in fact he was behind the whole thing. And also what he told him is that he's behind the assassination of George Lincoln Rockwell, who he hated. And he said that he ordered one of his members to kill him. And in fact, Taylor says that the guy who killed him was an ex-member of the American Nazi Party who at the time was the member of the Minutemen. And Taylor says that he knows for sure that he was a member of the Minutemen.
That's a weird story overall, the Rockwell assassination.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So Robert Depew told him he has a plan to kill the leader of... he killed Rockwell. He wants to kill the leader of the John Birch Society and also the leader of the biggest Klan group at the time. And basically to become the leader of the right wing. That was his idea.
Like the entire right wing.
Yes.
Damn.
And after he told him that, Depew organized like a fake assassination on himself, and immediately called the press and explained to them how he was there was an assassination attempt, but he was fortunately not at the house when the bomb went off and so on. And how he knows that this is a plan by Cuban communists to assassinate the leaders of the American right wing. They already assassinated Rockwell. Now they try to assassinate me, and I know that they want also to assassinate these two other guys that he earlier said to Taylor that he wants to kill. It was like his cover story, like it's Cubans,
Right, yeah, that was really the Cuban state's priority.
Yes, exactly. That's also what Robert Taylor says, like, there's no way. He also had a special group inside the Minutemen, and Robert Taylor was a member of that, and their mission was, in case of if Depew was killed, they were supposed to go out and kill all of these people who were members of the communist hidden government, like 25 of them. So it was not really what they said that they would kill them only when the communist government openly took power. But in case of Depue's death, they had a special team which had this assignment to just go and kill all of them and do all kinds of like sabotage and stuff like that. Yeah, that's
Fucking
the story.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I mean, it's
pretty nuts, even for us.
Yes.
I don't know.
Pretty nuts.
But I mean, there's a lot of similarities to other cases. They are, of course, pedophiles. There's some pedophiles here.
Yeah.
And psychopathic losers.
Yes. Yeah. One interesting thing, like.
So wait, what? Maybe just one thing. So what do you think? What is the body count here for them? I mean, how many?
I don't know.
How many murders can we actually tie them to?
I don't know. I have no idea because I don't know. No idea really, because the information is really not. Now there are books that tie them to a lot of things. From what I heard, I'm not sure how reliable they are. But even people who are in their leadership really don't know. Like Robert M. Taylor is pretty like honest sounding when he talks about this. He doesn't even exclude the possibility that they were the ones who killed, MLK or their own California leader, but he just doesn't know. Like,
right.
Depue told him they did, but he doesn't like. Maybe they did, but
Depue says a lot of things.
Lies about everything. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Like FBI knows probably.
Yeah, Depue's like, I went to Harvard and I have a
Yes.
PhD also from Princeton. And
Yes. Yes. It's interesting that like Robert N. Taylor says that Robert Depue told him at some point how his goal is not to take over the government. What he wants is like when the mess, the collapse comes, he wants to have enough men to just control some territory and to abolish all law there and to basically be a kind of a warlord there.
Yeah.
And this was his goal, which is interesting. It's also
I'm getting flashbacks to that
Yeah.
dude we talked about back in Arc 2. I'm forgetting his name right now, though, that Gestapo motherfucker in Serbia who was part of the Niš massacre.
Strahinja Janjic.
Janjic keeps coming to mind.
Yes. I mean, this was a more ambitious man, but yeah, there is some similarity in style there.
Personal.
I mean, I guess aspiring to be a warlord can be a more realistic goal than,
Yes.
Yes. Führer or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's also connected to this, what we mentioned, this racist view of individualism and democracy as something being inherently, like, he wanted to revert to some kind of tribal society, and that's his view of individualism and his freedom. And I guess he thinks, I don't know.
He sounds like a millionaire, honestly.
Yes.
I mean, this is like the vision that most of these like kind of survivalist American fascist types have, right? I mean, the anti-big government dudes do just want to just be like fucking warlords.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over
so they can stop people from touching their stuff.
Yes.
And so they can like, put people in their place or something. Like, on their like local scale. So like, God. Get back at the people that like bullied them in high school or something by like making them work on their whatever the fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. I mean,
work on their franchise fulfillment center and their fucking.
Man, I gotta say though, after this episode, I don't even really care who shot JFK. I just want to know if the FBI tried to take over the entire right wing of America by assassinating all of its leaders. Like, that's my only question right now.
It seems that they did.
Yeah.
There's also an interesting detail about Robert N. Taylor, and that he read Iron Gates. And
really?
And he was impressed by it. And he wrote something, I guess, on Facebook or something like this, where he said that it was like something, I don't remember exactly, but he said something like it was like a guidebook for psychopaths or something like that.
True.
And Martinet Press, the FBI funded Martinet Press like that, and they used it as their promotion with like a quote by Robert N. Taylor. But Taylor was in some kind of friendly communication with them, because I saw that he did comment on their blog or Facebook. I don't remember.
Just to remind the listeners who they are, we're talking about the Temple of Blood here.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
recently outed FBI informants since 2003 who were funded by FBI to have their Nazi Satanist publishing project called Martinet Press. Yes.
God, that
And
fits so nicely into this episode, doesn't it? It just
Yeah, it really
slides
does,
right
huh?
in. Yeah,
Yes.
very satisfying.
But he was in some kind of friendly communication with them, because I remember that he wrote that, but that was like, I think he agreed for them to use it as their promotion, and he did wrote on their page something that he's looking forward to getting the sequel or something like that, to read it.
Bluebird.
Yes. So yeah, he's kind of that kind.
Yeah,
of,
you're right about Robert N. Taylor looking like kind of like a cool wizard old guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can see it's like tattoos and shit too. But he's in this picture I see of him here on the internet. When I just like searched his name, he's wearing a necklace with the Vril Society logo.
Right.
So
I saw that as well. Yeah.
there's another little Nazi deep cut for all of our fans.
Yeah, he travels Europe and goes to like Nazi festivals in Lithuania and places like that, Hungary, and gives speech like dumbass talks about paganism, and they listen to him and like see him as some kind of a intellectual leader or a poet or whatever. It's just moronic stuff.
Yeah. Oof.
Like that stuff, like like how Odinism is somehow genetically a Germanic religion. And then he talks about Shintoism, and he says Shintoism is like it's basically exactly the same as Odinism or something like that. Like, okay, so it doesn't.
I mean, one of them's real though.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of
an
American
actual religion.
liberals that would agree that like you have to go back to your ethnic origins, pagan heritage, in order to celebrate your origin and not culturally appropriate other traditions.
Yeah, but they are
in paganism.
making up
It's a
their
big thing.
like pagan heritage, because
Yeah, of course they are, because there's nothing left of Christianity pretty much stomped out, the pagan tradition in Europe. So it's all just fucking.
But now you can buy it at Barnes and Noble. So look at the bright side.
Yes.
Barnes and Noble still exist.
Oh, I don't know. Jesus, does Borders? I don't know.
Bookstores.
Yeah. What the fuck's a book?
So I don't know. This is now the group that's somehow the closest to the state that we covered so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll come back to it for sure later.
Yeah.
This was
aside from like the Black Legion or Clan or whatever, which
yes.
is a whole different story. But yeah, I mean this seems to, it ties a lot of stuff together between like the old school Nazi movement in the pre-World War II area, and then the kind of modern militia, whatever.
And you can clearly see how they change Jewish to communist, like when they talk about hidden government or the communist agenda or something like that. It's very clear. And also this connection, I think, like this specifically American fascist thing about talking about freedom, individualism, and even democracy, but really thinking about I want to be a warlord.
Yeah, it is quite unique. I mean, and that is where the kind of American tradition goes in a completely different direction than in Europe.
Yes,
and which is why also like later on, I mean, we see this with the American Nazi Party and other Nazi organizations in the U.S. trying to like rationalize state control to like American right wingers who are very much dead set against that ideologically.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Also, before
they have to jump through different hoops to kind of explain why they are also like anti-tax or something.
Well, American Nazi Party was not the first name of the group. Before that, they were called something Free Enterprise National Socialists.
Right. Yeah, I remember. Jesus, it's the stupidest fucking name ever.
Yeah.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
What do you mean Free Enterprise National Socialist?
That's that no one thinks that they're like actual socialists.
Yeah.
The swastika wasn't enough for no one to suspect them. They're like not commies.
Right. All right. Well, man, you blew my mind tonight.
Yeah.
Got a lot to think on.
Yeah. Of course, they're pedophiles. That's always there.
Yes,
it seems
par for the course. Yeah.
Yeah. They all are, man. They really all are. Did you see they nabbed that guy in Brazil?
No.
For being a pedophile, and then he turned out to be one of the largest distributors and collectors of Nazi memorabilia in all of Brazil. He had like millions of dollars worth of Nazi shit in his house. Flags, uniforms, guns, all this shit. Straight pedophile. They're all like this.
Of course, yeah.
You can't make it up. What the fuck?
Seriously, like we've said this before, we're not like looking for this. We're not looking for like the ones that are pedophiles
not at all.
or the ones that are they just like we don't want to see it anymore. It would be great to have a few that aren't, But all the ones that aren't, I've noticed, the ones that aren't are the ones that are like more openly on the scam side of the thing, Like the ones that are more using it as like as a piggy bank. Those guys tend to be a little less sus in that regard.
They're just
either if you're a Nazi,
artists.
you're either a scam artist, a Fed, or a pedophile. And if you're really lucky, you can pull a hat trick and become Vindex.
So as I said, I would suggest ending with a Minutemen song.
Yes, please.
Like
clear
the
palette.
The good Minutemen. So 2 days ago I quit my job.
Congratulations.
So my friends Boris and Fritz offered that I can use our Patreon money until something other appears up, all of our $300, which is awesome.
Now listen, you actually did us a favor because that means that you're the first professional podcaster in the group, and none of us, we don't have to get called that. That's all you.
And the song is kind of about that. It's about having jobs and how it sucks. So it's it's for everyone out there who has to work for a living. And yes, that's it.
Yeah, and also a reminder to become patrons at patreon.com/tenapod.
Yep.
Support Ray. He's
support Boris and Fritz. Come on.
Yeah, I'm already supporting.
All right. See you later.
Ciao. Cheers.
Working on the edge, losing my self-respect for a man who presides over me. The principle of his creed, punch in, punch out, 8 hours, 5 days, sweat, pain, and agony. On Friday, I'll get paid. This ain't no picnic. This ain't no picnic. This ain't no picnic. This ain't no picnic.
Hey there, Fritz here from The Empire Never Ended. This has been one of our weekly free episodes for free people. But for premium people, we also have weekly premium episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/tenepod, TENEPOD, and also follow our various social media things in the show description there. Like and subscribe them. Follow them. Like and follow and subscribe. Follow them. Do it.
It was a hell of an explosion, and well, I guess that's all, sir.